Happy New Year and welcome to the January 6th, 2025 meeting of the East Point City Council. Madam City Clerk, roll call, please.
Councilmember Shropshire. Councilmember Freely will not be in attendance. Councilmember Atkins.
Present.
Councilmember Ziegler. Councilmember Cummings. Councilmember Mitchell. Councilmember Butler. And Councilmember Martin Rogers. Mayor Holiday Ingram, we have a quorum.
Thank you so much. East Point Tri-Cities Church, right? Yes. If you could come forward, Pastor, and provide the invocation for us, and then we will follow that with the pledge to the flag. Thank you so much for being here this evening.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Let's start with words from Jimmy Carter. His prayer was that God would make his life meaningful in the enhancement of his kingdom, and that his life would be meaningful in the enhancement of lives of his fellow human beings. So in those thoughts, let's pray. Heavenly Father, we come before you today with gratitude for the privilege to serve our community. We ask for your kingdom, for your wisdom and guidance over this meeting as decisions are made that impact the lives of those in East Point. We pray that you'll grant clarity, unity, and discernment to each council member and city leader. May their efforts reflect justice, compassion, and a commitment to the common good. Bless this city, its residents, and all who work to make it a place of peace and progress. In Jesus' holy name we pray. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our Sergeant at Arms this evening is Captain Robinson. Thank you so much for your service. And as Pastor just mentioned, since we last met, we have had some very giants in public service class, starting with December the 22nd, former State Senator Vincent Fort transitioned from labor to rest, and he valiantly represented State Senate District 39, of which East Point is a part. He was selected to be the Democratic whip, served on the Education Committee in the House, and really advocated for anti-predatory lending and foreclosure laws, as well as really being a stalwart and advocating for public education. And so his service was this past weekend, and we issued a proclamation proclaiming January the 4th as Senator Vincent Fort Day, in this Appreciation Day in the city of East Point, to honor his life and legacy, and encouraging everyone to continue to pray for his family, colleagues, constituents, and friends during this very difficult time. Then on December the 29th, he was the 74th governor of the state of Georgia. December 29th, 74th governor of the state of Georgia, who also was a former state senator, and the 39th, I'm getting my numbers mixed up, 39th president, I have it right here, 76th governor of the state of Georgia and the 39th president of the United States, and a Nobel Peace Prize winner, James Jimmy Carter Jr., passed away and transitioned. And President Carter was definitely a servant leader to our country, state, and steadfastly to Plains, Georgia, where he lived his entire life and taught Sunday school and continued to live in the house that he built with his own hands. We're truly grateful for his life of service and tireless humanitarian efforts that will continue to impact and benefit the world for generations to come. So our thoughts and prayers are with the Carter family and his friends around the globe today and the days ahead. And you know, there are a number of different services and things happening as it relates to celebrating the life and legacy of former governor, former state senator, former president Jimmy Carter. And I think he will be in the D.C. soon. There's like an 8-day plan, and then he goes back to Plains. for final commitment. And so another giant, again, in public service, and really lived a life of service and tireless humanitarian, and just someone that we can honor through continuing to serve, honor his life and legacy through our continued service. Then on Friday, January the 3rd of just this past week, East Point's 31st mayor, Joe Macon, transitioned from labor to rest. And I've spoken with his wife and extended condolences on behalf of the family. And Mayor Macon served on Planning and Zoning Commission prior to becoming our 31st mayor of the city of East Point. And while he served as mayor, he served as a board member of the Fort McPherson Planning Local Redevelopment Authority. He was a mentor, advisor, advocate, and friend to many, and he also will be truly missed. And so the works that he's done and the legacy he leaves truly speak for him and will continue to inspire and permeate the city of East Point. So we again ask you to join us. We've extended our condolences. Let's continue to pray for strength, peace, and comfort for the Macon family, and they continue to go process through this difficult time. In the conversation that I had with former First Lady Jennifer Macon, I shared with her that the city would definitely is here to support in any way that we can as she and the family go through the process of his transitioning and honoring his life and legacy. And so there has been a request made to me that I indicated that I would share with the full council, a request that they be allowed to have a memorial service for former Mayor Joseph, affectionately known as Joe Macon, here at City Hall. A date has not been selected, but they're looking to have it sometime later this month. He wanted a memorial service and a party. So they're also planning the party. They're not asking the party be here, but the memorial service to honor his life and legacy of service. And so I indicated that I would share it. I know, unfortunately, I think this is the first time in a while that I had to go through that many transitions in one meeting, but definitely wanted to start with that. We've already had prayer. And so if any council members would like to make any comments at this time, I will allow that at this time regarding any of those transitions. And then, again, the request from former Mayor Joe Macon's family is to allow them to have a memorial service here at City Hall sometime this month. Councilmember Shropshire.
Thank you. So the ask is to utilize the council chambers for a memorial service? Yes. That is the motion.
I second that.
It's been moved and properly seconded. Any discussion?
I want to second it.
Councilmember Mitchell seconded. If no further discussion, and I don't know if we need to include this as a part of the motion, but there may be some other ask of the city as it relates to either police escort and things that we generally may do or other requests. We probably would have another meeting or two if it's something that needs to be brought back to council. But I did want to indicate that on the record as a part of this discussion.
So that's fine. So what it is, so the motion to utilize the city chambers, council chambers for the memorial service, and if there's an ask for escort for the police service.
Okay.
Second stands.
Second still stands. Any discussion? Councilmember Butler.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, for bringing this to council attention. At this time, I would like to salute Joe Macon, Jimmy Carter, and Vincent Ford. We do appreciate all the public service they've done for us, in particular East Point and this community, and they will be missed.
Councilmember Mitchell.
Yes, along those same lines, condolence to all of those who have passed. In particular, I want to give my deepest gratitude to Ms. Jennifer and his sons and family, children. Joe was definitely a father figure for me. When I had rough times on council, he's one I could confide in, talk me through things. He donated to my campaign, was always there for support. So I think this is fitting for him to have his ceremony in the council chambers. We definitely lost a legend, and I hope we can all, learn something from him. So with that, I yield.
Councilmember Ack.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I just want to reiterate the comments of my colleagues as well for the Ford family, the Carter family, as well as the Macon family, and sincere condolences out to Jennifer, John, and Julian on the loss of their husband and father and our city. He poured into our city, and he served in several capacities, and I'm so glad that we're going to have an opportunity to show our gratitude to the Macon family for his service to our city. So thank you.
All right. No other discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. We'll be sure to let the family know. Thank you, council. The other thing I wanted to mention in presentation and announcements, residents reached out regarding information they heard about the East Point Post Office closing. So immediately upon hearing that, just a couple weeks ago, I reached out to Congresswoman Nikema Williams' office, and they looked into it. And just as of today, I received information from them that they reached out to the United States Postal Service Government Relations Office and have been informed that the lease, so that property where the post office is in East Point is not federal property. They lease it, so they don't own it. But the lease for that property is not set to expire until December 31st of this year. And the agency has every intention of continuing to extend the lease at this time. And so the information that we're getting is that they're there, the lease expires at the end of this year, and there's every intention of the federal agency to continue to negotiate to try to extend the lease to remain in that location. I'm sure they've been, I asked the exact date that the post office opened here, but I know it's been a couple decades. And so as they've negotiated that lease in the past, that's their intention at this time to continue to negotiate it. But again, the current lease doesn't expire to December 31st of this year, and they are intending to negotiate to continue to extend that lease for the post office to remain in East Point. So I know that was a concern that came up. And so I'm grateful for the responsiveness always of Congresswoman Nikema Williams' office when we reach out with questions or concerns to be able to get information back to us. I definitely wanted to share that information with the community. Next up, and I'll just say, I mean, I think it's a given. The post office is a federal agency, is operated by the federal government, not by our local government, which is why I reached out to our federal congresswoman, or one of our federal congresswomen. Next, we have introducing our GRPA, Georgia Recreation and Parks Association. That's what that stands for, right? Okay. 10U State Girls Flag Football Champions, come on up.
See, I'm not alone today. All right. Okay, good evening, Mayor and Council, and Happy New Year. The last time I was before you guys, we were celebrating our young men who went to Dothan, Alabama, coached by the same coach when we punched our ticket to the Pro Bowl. So very excited about this. It's always good to be on the right side of history, and we're going to give you a little bit of background for some of the new council members of our space and the area of flag football. Back in 2016, we qualified for a grant with the Atlanta Falcons to be able to offer flag football. 2017, we moved forward with developing the East Point Flag Football League. The league started out with about 8 teams, and now we are a shade under 60 teams. Right now, we actually represent the largest recreation flag football league in the state of Georgia. More recently, DeJuan and I traveled to Dallas, Texas to be a part of the NFL flag conferences. Happy to announce that our flag football program is on the map. We've been through a lot of trials and tribulations to get to this point, but I'm so very excited about what we did and what we accomplished on maybe about a month ago now, right, JC? About a month ago now. I'm happy that Joseph J.C. Smith has invested his time with our young ladies, and we really fast-tracked our way to the top of the food chain in the space of flag football, and as well with the young ladies. I'm going to turn it over to my Assistant Director, DeJuan, to give you guys some perspective on the history that was made.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. How y'all doing today? Glad to see all of you. It's always a pleasure to come before you. On today, first off, I really want to start off with honoring the parents of these young ladies. The parents, if you would, please stand. I just want to say thank you to those parents. They go through so much. As you see how cold it is tonight, on some of those practice days, it almost felt like it was that cold. So I really want to just acknowledge them and their sacrifices that they make to make sure that these girls have exactly what they need and are able to do the things that they want to do. Now, our players, our student athletes, these young ladies that stand before you played in our East Point Flag Football League, but we didn't have girl teams, we had boys teams. So they played with the boys in our East Point Flag Football League. So they learned a lot of valuable lessons playing with the boys. Then they decided to play in another league in Palmetto where they got a chance to play against girls. Well, we know it's kind of hard to find that amount of girls in the same age group. So the league in Palmetto had girls that ranged from 8 to 12. Well, needless to say, these young ladies won that championship being 10 with beating some of the 12-year-old girls. So I think that's a mode for a round of applause. And it didn't stop there, so GRPA wanted to start getting into flag football as they see as one of the biggest sports growing with our youth on today. And they called us, asked us to be a part of it because we have been doing flag football for the longest as a recreation center now in the state of Georgia. So our girls decided to go down to Jackson, Georgia, and play in the first annual GRPA state championship, and they were able to come home with the gold medal. So this was the first time that we've had a GRPA girls flag football state championship, and the city of East Point won it. So as you can see this very nice trophy here, and I want to bring Coach JC up. Coach JC is a tremendous volunteer in our program. He goes over and beyond for these young ladies and even the young men in our program. I want to make sure that he comes up and call and identify each one of these young ladies so we can get them their just due.
Good evening, good evening. Again, it's a pleasure to be here tonight. Again, like they said before me, it starts with the parents and their dedication. Like he said, we went to Jackson that Friday night. It was low 30s. These girls played in low 30-degree temperatures. Some of them couldn't feel their hands. And you got to use your hands to pull flags. So it was a tough game, but we pulled it out. Came back the next Saturday. It was a little warmer, and we pulled out the championship. So big shout out to the parents and the players, and I'll call them up one by one now. So first, I want to introduce Carmen. Good job. Thank you. Miss Aria, Miss Carter, Sydney, her sister Skylar, Autumn, Bailey, aka BB, Ren, Demi, last but not least London.
Right. Okay, we actually brought you all some goodies as well. I definitely want you guys to come down, take a picture with the young ladies. I'm not sure if I got all adult small up there, but we're going to let you grab a T-shirt, and I got them down here now. If we can knock out a picture, we will be out of you all's way.
Okay.
Did you want to say some words, Mayor, before we do pictures? Or-
See if any of the council members would like to say anything, but let me say how proud and like y'all are about to bring me to tears I am that you all not only played the sport, but excelled. And when you go out and represent East Point, you're representing our city. And you all did an amazing job. And because of you, we got more champions in the city of East Point. And that speaks to our Parks and Rec Director, Sherlord Pinkett, and his leadership, DeJuan Anderson, and JC, coach. I'm assuming this may be one of our other coaches. Yes, thank you. Because it takes a lot. My daughter plays travel sports, and so parents, hats off to y'all. I was just freezing this weekend because her team, she plays on the national team, so we were in South Carolina at practice, and I tell people I don't really stay in the sun too long unless I'm watching softball or in the winter or the fall, so I know the level of commitment, but not just that, the practice, the work after practice, because you can't become a champion just practicing when they have practice. Like, you all have to put in time and really commitment, and so I encourage you to keep up this championship mindset, not only on the field, off the field, in the classroom, and continue to be leaders and continue to make us proud, continue to soar, and know that you all have the support of us, the city of East Point, as you continue to grow and thrive and soar and become very great, responsible, productive young ladies. So I am extremely, extremely proud of each of you. And we will come down to take some pictures. Councilmember Cummings is going to share some words. So at this point, all of the other council members may decide to say something. If they feel like it's already said, they may not. So we'll give everybody an opportunity, and then we're going to come down and take a picture with the champs tonight.
Well, I'll be very short. First of all, Happy New Year to everyone, and congratulations, ladies. I am so super proud of you. And just from you guys coming from humble beginnings, you know, because there weren't a lot of girl teams to play with. You played with the guys, which honed your skills, which is now the reason why y'all can just whip any female team that's out there. But one of the things that he said that was very important, that Coach DeJuan said, was student athletes. So you young ladies are students, and you're representing in the classroom and both on the field, and I think that speaks volumes. Parents, huge, huge shout out to you just for the time that it takes, just like the mayor said, the commitment, you know, just getting these young ladies to and from practice and making sure, you know, that all the schoolwork and everything is done as well. So I'm super proud of you all. So continue, you know, to do well. And y'all wrap up. It's cold out there.
All right, it's picture time. So parents, we're going to do it like this. We're going to take a picture because I know you all want a picture of us in the picture, but then we're going to have all you all get in the picture as well, and then we're going to have staff take a picture of all of us. So we will have not only our champions, but their very important support network and family with them as well. So we'll come down, we'll do just the young ladies first, and then we will do one with young ladies and parents, well, young ladies and council, mayor and council, and then the parents and family will join us.
All right, everybody face this way, face this way. You want to go to it? All right. Y'all come on to the back side. Go to the back side.
So before we transition to the next presentation, we also received a lot of questions about the library in East Point and have been told that it should be opening this month. We're also trying to get more specific information on that, but we reached out a couple times last year, in the fall of last year, and they're doing some renovations and working on some different systems. So that should be opening this month is the last information we heard about the East Point Library should be reopening. Miss Jessie, our next presentation is HB 581 property tax presentation. I'm going to turn it over to you for presentation from staff.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of council. Shannon Golden and Jeffrey Jackson are here this evening to provide you with an overview of House Bill 581.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Happy New Year. I'm here with Jeff Jackson, and we're going to try to make sense of this House Bill 581, which is also House Rule 1022, and it relates to the floating house floating home exemption, as well as sales tax, and as well as a tax procedural change. Georgia House Bill 581, House Rule 1022, passed in April of 2024. It was signed by the governor at that time. It enacts a comprehensive reform to property tax procedures and introduces a mechanism aimed at providing property tax relief to homeowners. It has three major components: a statewide floating exemption, a new floating local option sales tax called the FLOSS, as well as property tax procedural changes. These measures are designed to enhance transparency in property tax assessments, offer homeowners protection against rapid property value increases, and provide local governments with tools to deliver property tax relief through sales tax options. And again, the bill was signed into law April 18th, 2024. It was approved in the November 2024 statewide referendum. And I'll have Mr. Jackson talk about the floating homestead exemption.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. House Bill 581 implements a statewide floating homestead exemption for all local governments, including counties, cities, and school boards. A floating homestead is a special type of homestead exemption designed to offset or reduce increases in taxable value to the property. It is also referred to as a base year or value offset exemption. Freezes are a type of floating homestead exemption but do not have an annual inflationary adjustment. A regular homestead, floating homestead, works like this. It works by increasing the value of the exemption to offset inflation. For example, if a property had a taxable value of $100,000 and the taxable value increased the following year due to market changes to $110,000, then the exemption floats to be worth $10,000 of taxable value, so the taxpayer still pays on the original base year value of $100,000. How does House Bill 581's floating homestead exemption work? The House Bill 581 floating homestead exemption is unique because the base year is adjusted and will increase by a rate of inflation determined by the State Revenue Commissioner, most likely using the Consumer Price Index. If we take that same property that we looked at on that slide, the previous slide, with a $100,000 taxable base year, and the Consumer Price Index is 2% the following year, then the base value of the $100,000 may be increased up to 2% to give an adjusted base value of $102,000. That exemption would float to be worth $8,000 because in the previous slide it showed $110,000. You can't go above the 102, so the exemption floats to be worth $8,000. So then the value of the property that the taxpayer pays would be $102,000. So it increased $8,000. The float is $8,000, which after the 102 is going to float, the 110 would be reduced to 102. For homes first receiving this exemption in taxable year 2025, the base year assessed value will be the 2024 assessed value. There will be no change. For homes first receiving the exemption in later years, the base year will always be the assessed value for the immediately preceding year. Similar to other homestead exemptions, the value will be reset when the home is sold and is adjusted with any substantial property change. Homeowners cannot transfer the exemption to a new property owner. The effect of House Bill 581 homestead exemption. The taxable value of a home may only increase at a rate of inflation each year. Essentially, controlling this will control how the value of a home can increase annually. Homeowners already granted a homestead will receive this exemption automatically. Non-homesteaded properties, i.e. commercial, rental, will continue to be valued at fair market value. How does this new homestead exemption impact existing homestead exemptions? The new floating homestead exemption is in addition to and not in lieu of non-floating homestead exemptions. This will not repeal nor replace existing homestead exemptions. If there is an existing local floating homestead exemption, the taxpayer will receive which of the two exemptions is more beneficial. This is also true if a local floating homestead exemption is added in the future. This is key. Existing local exemptions, such as the City of East Point, such as the $2,000 assessed value we have already, will be added after the floating homestead is calculated. How can a local government opt out of the homestead exemption? Any governing authority may elect to opt out of the floating homestead exemption created by House Bill 581 by following a procedure like the public notification of tax increase when a full rollback is not taken. The local government must advertise and conduct 3 public hearings of intent to opt out and later adopt a resolution. You must file a resolution to Secretary of State by March 1st, 2025. If the procedures are not met, opt-out is not effective. This process takes effect on January 1st, 2025, and must be completed by March 1st, 2025. And from my understanding, they're saying February 20, the last day of February. A governing authority may not opt out of the statewide floating homestead exemption after this deadline. However, the local delegation may pass a local act of the General Assembly to implement a local floating homestead exemption at any time. The decision to opt out is independent among local governments. A county, the cities, and the school board may each decide whether to opt out. The decision of whether or not to opt out will not impact the other local government's homestead exemption. This may result in homes having different taxable values. Is the decision to opt out or opt in permanent? Yes, the decision will be permanent. No action is needed by the local government to have the homestead exemption apply. Once the opt-out period has passed, there is no future method to opt out. If a local government opts out, there is no future method to opt in. to the House Bill 581 exemption. Of course, a similar homestead exemption can still be done in the traditional manner. House Bill 581, Part 2, procedural property tax changes. Created an estimated rollback rate which is certified to the tax commissioner or collector by local governments. The estimated rollback rate is required to be included on the assessment notice, replacing the previous year's millage rate. This is designed to attempt to allow local government to give a more accurate estimate of what tax liability will be. This gives local government broad flexibility to set this rate wherever they deem appropriate. This does not need to be the same millage rate as the rollback rate for a taxpayer bill of rights. If the adopted millage rate exceeds the estimated rollback rate, then a disclaimer is included on the tax bill stating the name of the governing authority that exceeded the estimated rollback rate, and that this will result in an increase of taxes owed. Procedural changes: modifying the 3-year lock for appeal so the taxpayer only receives the lock if they receive a value reduction upon appeal. Updating the settlement conference statute so that if neither the taxpayer nor their representatives participates in good faith, then the taxpayer shall not receive the benefit of the temporary 15% reduction in taxes owed and shall not be awarded attorney's fees. Requiring that the chief appraiser ensure that every parcel in the county be appraised at least every 3 years. This is at the county level. This has nothing to do with the city of East Point. Only if you appeal, then that goes to the county level as far as that is concerned. The procedural property tax changes.
The floating homestead local option sales tax, FLOSS. This is part 3 of the 3 major components of House Bill 581. House Bill 581 makes 2 major changes to local sales tax. It revises the provision of OCGA 48-8-6, which limits the percentage of local sales tax a jurisdiction may levy. It creates a new local option sales tax contingent upon jurisdictions having a base year value homestead exemption. What is the floating local option sales tax? It's a new sales tax that is created for the limited purpose of property tax relief. It may be levied in increments of 0.5% increments up to 1%. To be eligible to levy the tax, both the county and all cities within the county that levy a property tax must have, in effect, a floating homestead exemption, either the one created by this bill or a local floating homestead exemption. Cities that levy the most, which East Point has the most, are excluded from this new sales tax. So we wouldn't be eligible for the sales tax because we have the most. Cities levying the most municipal option sales tax, that's what the most stands for water and sewer projects, are excluded. Cities currently will not be considered for eligibility at this time and are not included in these calculations. Tax will not be collected within the city, and the city cannot receive the proceeds of this tax. The most cities with the most include the City of Atlanta, City of East Point, College Park, and Hapeville. The sales tax revision and FLOSS, this legislation revises the existing 2 local sales tax cap. Exemptions now include the East Block, which doesn't apply to the City of East Point, up to 1% of the transportation sales tax, which includes the following: the regional T-Splosh. We do have a T-Splosh, so that applies to us. Single county T-Splosh, transit Splosh, and MARTA. One of the other specialties, Penny, include the new sales tax, which is the FLOSS, which we are not eligible, and the other specialty penalties, sales tax are for Columbus and Augusta. And again, the most for Atlanta and the cities of East Point, College Park, and Hateville. And that applies to the city of East Point. When it comes to, as it relates to the timeline of this, we know that it was adopted in November 5th. House Bill 581 takes effect January 1st. What finances needs to bring before council is an estimated rollback to be certified by mayor and council. So that gives us enough time to get it to Fulton County so they can do their, so we can meet the deadline by March 1st. And we're hopeful to submit that estimated rollback to Fulton County by January 27th. But here again, we can play with these dates up until February, I believe, 28th.
I think it was the 28th.
Thank you. And that's the end of our presentation, and we'll take questions and try to answer them as best as we can.
All right, thank you so much for your presentation. Councilmember Mitchell.
Yes, thank you for the presentation. Quick question. So before this bill, were residents paying, let's take for your example, the whole 10% of the homestead?
The city of East Point doesn't have a floating exemption. We just have a local, the flat exemption of $2,000.
So that's the 2% you were saying?
No, it's just $2,000 flat.
The city of East Point has 4 exemptions. You have a HO1, which is your regular homestead. It's $2,000 across the board for anybody that lives in their property. Then you have an HO4, which is your senior homestead. You have a HO5, which is your disabled, and then you have a HO6, which is a disabled veteran. What this is saying is we already have a $2,000 homestead exemption for anybody that has homestead on their property. What that 2,000 was saying that in the event that the state says that the CPI, the Consumer Price Index, is 2%, that $100,000 home could only increase to $102,000. That's that extra $2,000. And if we were to, let's say that they would come up and they said that the value of the property was 110, then that means it's $8,000 over what they could go over. So it can only go to 102. So when you go to 110, that means there is a floating homestead of $8,000 because it's over the $102,000 limit that they're able to put the value on the property.
So if I understand this correctly. So does this affect us? So since we already have the flat $2,000?
We already have a flat $2,000 homestead exemption.
So we won't be losing any type of revenue from this bill passing, or?
Yes.
Can we get an estimate on that?
It's undeterminable right now because you got to think about there's some factors that need to be looked at. When you look at the number of exemptions or the exemption itself, the floating exemption is adding to the amount of tax relief. So then it decreases the revenue. But we don't know how much it's going to decrease the revenue because everything is an estimate at this point.
Was that averaged into this year's budget? Excuse me, was that included or projected in this year's budget, this bill?
This will take effect in 25's tax year, which will be FY26 budget. So when we begin the process of building the budget for FY26, we will have to do the projections for revenue and present that to you.
No, it sounds great. I just had some questions, but okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. So could you help us understand the rollback rate?
That's the one thing that we're trying to get clarification on, because a lot of cities are saying they're going to use last year's millage rate. But then you have cities that say they're going to use a 5-year average. to use as the rollback rate. And then once we put that, and that's only for the county to put on the assessment notice that goes out. That's not saying that that's what it's going to be. That's saying that's what they're going to put on the assessment notice, but at the end, when we finally do have that rollback rate, that's when it's going to come into play. But we have to give them something, and that gives us an opportunity to say, okay, if we do the 5% average, we can do that. But they're saying that it's best to overestimate the rollback rate.
That's a great question. Do you have what our current rollback rate is?
If I'm not mistaken, it was 12% last year. When we
But
calculate,
not our current millage rate,
the
but,
current millage rate is 13.
okay, very good.
So-
So we're required to give notice if we're above 12%, the 12 mills. Is that what you're saying?
No, they're saying we need to give them what we believe would be a fair rollback rate.
So that's what my question is. So currently, because we're above our rollback rate, we have to give notice to residents, which states that we are above this and there's an increase in tax. But we've been reducing our millage rate in order to try to counteract the increase in home values. And we've done that steadily for 7 years, except for last year, I think, where we've maintained a steady millage rate.
Yes.
So I guess my question is, now we get to redefine what that rollback rate is in terms of notification of residents.
Yes, that's right. And then once the rollback rate is determined, that's going to determine whether or not we have to advertise those 3 years.
Yes.
Okay, so that's what that is.
And you also said that the appraised value will be based on a cost of living rate adjustment. So is that 2%, as you said in the example, or does that number vary?
That number is going to vary. It's based off of the consumer price index, and that's based off of inflation, year-to-year inflation. That number can be 2%, it could be 3%, 4%, depending on the level of inflation and when it's calculated.
Here's my final question, and you may not have this answer now, but it's something for you guys to raise. Give me 1 second. I want to phrase it correctly.
All right.
I'll come back.
Thank you.
All right, I don't see any other lights. I have a couple questions. So you mentioned in the earlier slides that there will be people, the homestead exemption will be first, certain people will get it first in 2025, and others will get it after that? Like, how is it determined who gets it when?
No, everyone gets it. That has the homestead exemption right now. Everyone will get it. But what it was saying was in future years that the rate will.
Like if somebody buys a new home?
If it buys a new home, then their value will be based on the previous year's value.
Okay. Then the other is, you mentioned that the timeline had council certifying something.
The rollback
on
rate.
The rollback rate on January 21st, 2025. So I think, I know for me, a lot of my questions might be answered. I might be able to understand if I see the numbers, like what's the impact, right? So like the question was asked, will this impact us? And you were like, yeah, it sounds like it's going to decrease. It could potentially decrease our tax revenue. But the question is, if we opt out, so if we opt in,
It's automatic.
which way is it? If we opt in, does it decrease? If we opt out, do we stay the same? Like,
If we opt out, we would continue to do business as we are.
and if we opt in, it could reduce.
It could reduce. They have done some things to also help that too, going past the local SPLOST.
Well,
But we don't, we're not
you're
eligible for the FLOS.
Right,
We got
because
the most.
but I guess what I'm saying is, they have increased certain areas that we have as far as the maximum millage rate also. The maximum millage rate used to be 15. They increased it to 20 mills.
Well, our charter is where we have the 15 mil cap. So we'd have to amend our charter to give us more, because we can't go over what the maximum is by state, but we can decide to have less. So we would need to decide if we want to amend the charter to reflect the maximum millage rate of 20, because right now our maximum charter millage rate is 15.
That's correct.
So this sounds like a lot of information to digest, think about, and get information on. Are you all planning to give us more information at our Monday work session, so that we're not waiting until the 21st to have to make a decision around certification with trying to get everything answered then? I think there's an opportunity, Ms. Jessie, for our work session on Monday for us to get more information, for us to get like examples around numbers, right? Like, we saw the examples around what it would mean for an individual property owner. What does it mean for us for tax revenue collection? And I know it's all speculative, but if we could get something around that, if we could also use the work session as an opportunity to, flush out more questions that might come out over the week. Like, my concern is if we just talk about this tonight and then it's on the January 21st meeting for us to certify, we have missed the opportunity to probably have some more discussion, get some more questions answered, get some more information. So we all feel that we're making an informed decision. And then the other thing is that the South Fulton Municipal Association meeting I think it's January 23rd this month. I was trying to see what city it's in, but there's been discussion about potentially having a discussion at that meeting about this issue, because of course it does impact all cities. So that may be an opportunity where we'll have in South Fulton on January 23rd. So that might be an opportunity for the cities to have a discussion, and maybe, I'm not sure if they're planning to have somebody to present, but it also may be helpful, Ms. Jessie, if somebody from this team, either both or one, could attend that meeting to hear those discussions, because staff might understand what's being discussed at a deeper level than we may. So that's January 23rd in South Fulton. Member Cummings?
Yes, I had one question. On the slide there, it said about the exemption would not be transferred to new properties. So I sell a home in East Point that I currently live in, and I moved to another house in East Point. You're saying that I can't transfer that exemption, the new? So,
No, ma'am.
I don't know, because, well, that's what, so can you clarify that for me, please?
What they mean by transfer, it mean you can't transfer it to another, that same property to another. It can't transfer. You can't transfer it by sale. You can't transfer it any way. It has to be
remains with that
yours. It remains on the home. And if it sells or if you move out,
Then that homeowner would take
the
theirs.
homeowner has to apply or either have homestead added.
Okay, it's
Just
not a
as you,
diverse-
when you move to your new one, you would apply for the homestead.
I'm tracking. Thank you, sir.
Councilmember Zig?
Thank you. So, okay, so from what I'm gathering is that this is a floating homestead exemption, which is designed to try and protect homeowners from their home values exploding in values to where they all of a sudden cannot pay their property tax, correct?
Correct.
So when we talk about that, so the increase that would be on homeowners is based off of what the price is for inflation, right?
It's pegged to inflation. The floating rate is pegged to inflation, yes.
Right. So when we talk about this would be a quote-unquote decrease in revenue, it's really just a cap on the increase. So property values would increase, inflation probably increase, but it's just going to minimize how big of an increase it is.
Correct. I mean, yes.
Right. So I think just to be careful in talking about what a decrease in revenue is, because, you know, year after year after year, it will be an increase in taxes. We will see more taxes come into East Point. And, you know, this really puts more pressure on us to develop more economically, because right now the pressure is on homeowners to provide that tax revenue for the city. And I think that in passing this, that it would really put pressure on us to develop the city economically so we get tax revenue from that side of the table, because they are exempt from the floating homestead exemption. So I think that.
Right, well, those that have the exemption would be, it would apply to them. So the burden would then pass on to those that do not have the exemption. That's your commercial, agricultural, industrial.
Right.
So as that increases, yes, you would have revenue from that.
Right, okay, thank you so much.
Councilmember Atkins.
Yes, so if we have, if the increase is tied to the CPI, then do homeowners have the ability to appeal, or does that ability go away because it's not just based on the county's tax assessment, it's based on that number that is the CPI and not necessarily just the assessment?
From what we're understanding, that's part of it. The appeal process, we don't know how it's going to work. We only know that the appeal process changes as far as how if the homeowner gets the 15% reduction, but they can still appeal. But the question that you're asking, we got to get clarification, because I can't say that they cannot appeal. Just because if it goes up and they feel it's not justified, right, I can't say you can't appeal. But I will get an answer to that question for you.
Right, and I'm asking the question because I guess a part of the appeals is to give homeowners due process. And if they felt that this is subjective, an appeal is somewhat subjective, there are market conditions that will drive that, but they feel like, I think y'all assess me too high. But the CPI is not so subjective. It's the consumer price index.
Correct.
So that's why I'm asking, if we decide to opt in, a homeowner decides, okay, this with the CPI and what my assessment is combined, I want to appeal because I think this is too high. But it sounds like it may not be possible to do that if it's tied to the CPI. So that would be helpful just to get that information.
I'm going to get that for you, sir.
Thank you. So my question is this. This is a new law that just went into effect as of January the 1st.
Correct.
So right now, you all are still, the other cities are still trying to gather the information to see how it's going to affect their cities, as far as affect their tax base when it comes to collecting property taxes. So, and you said that if a home valued at, let's say, $100,000, then the most you could collect is, what was the amount?
If it's when it's attached to the CPI, we're assuming the CPI is 2%. Mm-hmm. If that home was to go up to $110,000, the max value that we could assess taxes is the 102. The difference in the 102 and the 110 is the homestead float. It's the floating homestead.
So if you could only assess it at, let's say, 102, that's what you would collect.
Right, the 40% of the 102 would be the amount of the assessed value, and then you multiply that by the millage rate.
So that's if we opt in, it would be at that. So it's like it's capped at that price, or it's capped at that price.
It would be capped at that price based on.
And we couldn't collect more because it would be capped at that price.
Correct.
So if we opt in and the house is, if it's more than that, we can only collect a certain amount, we couldn't collect more. But if we opt out, then we can collect the full, what we've been collecting.
Right, you wouldn't have a floating exemption.
Okay,
That
so-
portion would be gone.
Okay, so technically, we would lose money if we opt in because we're capped at that amount. But if we opt out, then we would still, the tax would increase because we're collecting at the full amount, correct?
Full fair market value.
Oh, okay, that's what okay. So when we do the work session, you all are gonna bring back the information as to the pros and the cons to this.
Yes, yes, ma'am.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure. So we would lose if we opt in, and if we opt out, then we'll still have
Of the full market value
the full market value.
of the property, assessed property.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Butler.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I do have verbally what I wanted to ask. So say, for example, home prices decrease because something happens, like in 2008. Will the homeowner be locked in at the increased value?
No, it's just only in inflationary cycles where the home value is increasing. What they're trying to do is bring that tax relief to that homeowner, so it doesn't necessarily, have a big swing up. When you have a deflationary cycle, it'll be the value of the home say that home is valued at $87,000.
So yeah, let's
It'll
use
be that fair market value of the $87,000.
Exactly. Okay, so exactly. And I just wanted to follow up with my colleague. She asked, could we, I just want to make a clarification, and I'll state it this way. So what's been proposed is, the reason why we've had an increase in taxes, property taxes, is not because we have increased our millage rate, it's because the assessed values of the homes have been steadily increasing.
The fair market value of the home.
The fair market value.
Yes, sir.
So, and we charge
13 meals.
13 meals.
Correct.
So what this is giving us the opportunity to do is, and that 13 meals is currently higher than our rollback rate.
That's correct.
So therefore, we have to advertise. What this bill allows us to do is giving us relief from exorbitant increasing in values. But if we had to raise taxes, we can do that through the millage rate.
That is correct, sir.
So it's not that we're locked in at this. What we're doing is we're reducing the burden of an increase in values that's happening throughout the state, and we get to set our baseline millage rate. But if we had to, in the case of an emergency, raise more revenue through increasing the property taxes, we can do that. Because we will be able to increase the millage rate.
Correct.
That's
Yes.
correct.
Okay. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I knew that.
Okay.
But I wanted to make sure that it was put out there that we would not lose money, when technically if we opted in, we would lose it, but if we stay where we are, we won't lose it.
I don't. I think-
So let's go, let's not do the
Thank you.
question and
I'm
answer.
out of order. I appreciate it.
Across.
Thank you for the.
But Councilmember Butler, if you are done, I'll go to Councilmember Mitchell.
I kind of have the same question. So if we opt in, we potentially lose revenue. Did I see somewhere in the slide where they were saying it's like a 0.05, they get add sales tax or something?
Right. So
To offset
the
the loss?
city of East Point currently has municipal option sales tax, right? So by definition of this law, we're not eligible to participate in the floss because we got the most, right? If you do not have a most, you can participate in this what's called a floating local option sales tax. And the increment starts at 0.05% and goes all the way up to 1%. In the state of Georgia, you have a max sales tax of, I think, 9%. 4% goes to the state, 3% goes to the county, and then whatever the local government may have in sales taxes to equal up to 9%. But in the case of City of East Point, we won't even qualify for the floss.
Okay, thanks.
Councilmember Ziegler.
Thank you. And so, the time when your house gets reassessed, or not, I guess it wouldn't be the house getting reassessed at that point. It would be when the inflation could go up or down. That's assessed every 3 years in regards to how much property tax you'll have to pay on your house, correct? So, wasn't it that, that like you're locked in for 3 years as a homeowner?
Well, the assessment, the 3 year, that's a Fulton County.
That's only if you
That's
appeal.
only Fulton County,
That's Fulton County,
Fulton
yeah.
County and you appeal.
if you appeal.
And if you have a reduction, right now, if you appeal and it stays the same, then you would get that 3 year, that's now, or well, last year, you'll get that 3 year lock. But now they're saying if you appeal and it does not reduce, you don't get the 3 year lock. So if your bill is 100,000 last year and you appeal it and it comes back 100 and they say, okay, we're going to reduce it back to 100,000, you don't get a 3 year lock. But if they say, okay, we overestimated and it's 98,000, you get a 3 year lock. That's basically what they're saying.
Okay, so as an East Point homeowner, if we opt in, you could still get an increase in tax every year, correct? Because it would be based off inflation, so as long as inflation is increasing, then
There's a possibility that each year you could, but they also said, I'm sorry. Yeah, go ahead. They also said that if it does not, if the CPI does not increase, it stays the same.
Okay,
So if it does not increase, your taxes don't go up.
okay. Got it. But if it does increase, then you will get an increase in taxes.
Correct.
Yes.
Got it.
And it could go from 1% to what?
Yeah, it just depends on the economic cycle that we're in. We're not in the law doesn't talk about the difference in economic cycles where you talk about stagflation, you can talk about regular CPI, regular inflation, or you can talk about hyperinflation. It doesn't address that. But you can have all three of those happen at different times. So, and yes, based on what the CPI is for this floating exemption piece, you can have an increase in taxes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. So in terms of when the CPI is published, so that we'll know what that number is, because what I'm hearing is that based on where the CPI is, then that will inform us in terms of where we may need to place the millage rate to mitigate some of the losses that we could potentially have if, the CPI is low or high or whatever the assessment is.
Mm-hmm.
So then my question is, in terms of the publishing of the CPI and our budgeting process, we would have to know whatever that number is, right, in order to factor that into any of the forecasting and projections.
That's correct, to a certain degree. When Fulton County gives us the digest, it would be based on the CPI already. That digest would give us everything that we would need to do our projections.
Okay. Thank you.
So a couple things. I think if we opt in, this is an opportunity to give homeowners more of a higher exemption.
Correct.
By opting in to do the state. But there is also nothing that prevents us from opting in and doing a local floating homestead exemption through a local act of the General Assembly, like through our local delegation, if we want to do that as well, right? Or you can do one if not the other. Like if you opt into the state, can you also do a local, because it indicated you can't opt in after March 1st, but there's nothing to prevent you from doing a floating homestead exemption through local legislation.
That is correct.
Right, but can you do both? Can you opt in and can you do local legislation? Or if you're considering doing local legislation to increase the floating homestead exemption, because there's been discussion about increasing the homestead exemption for a couple of years, and we've talked about getting the tax digest too late to make those types of decisions, right? Is there a way to opt in and still be able to do that? Or if you opt in, you can no longer do the local?
I would have to have an answer for you. No, the local, but it doesn't take away the local.
No, not that, the local, so you can do a local floating homestead exemption through local legislation.
Yes.
But when you all shared that, you shared like, if you don't opt in by March 1st, this doesn't prevent you from doing local legislation for a local floating homestead exemption.
Correct.
But if you opt in by March 1st and still does that prevent you from later doing a local floating homestead exemption?
No, it doesn't, because you have cities that have a floating exemption now, and what Mr. Jackson said in the presentation is that you got to determine which one is more beneficial. The one
So you won't get the effect of both. But, so if we opt in and then we say, well, we want to give our residents more and implement a local floating homestead exemption that's higher, let's just say that, they won't get the benefit of both, they'll get the benefit of the one that is higher.
That benefits, yeah.
And if we decide not to opt in and then we be like, oh, but maybe we want to do it, we can still create a local floating homestead exemption.
That's correct.
So we have an option, whether we opt in or not, to do a local floating homestead exemption. The question is, do we want to opt in to maybe get started, but then later can increase, right?
Correct.
Nothing prevents us from doing that. Okay.
Correct. Yes, ma'am.
The other thing, I mean, the reality of it is whenever we are providing additional exemptions, there is an impact on what we're going to receive from the residents who qualify for the exemption.
Yes.
So there's going to be a decrease in revenue from that property, while it might be offset by commercial property taxes when you look at the full, like, so we're collecting 200,000 and this year 120,000 is coming from commercial and 80,000 is coming from residential. If we do this, maybe 75 is coming from residential and 125 is coming from commercial. So there's a potential, like, the total amount collected might be the same. It's just who's paying it. But there will be a reduction
Yes.
as it relates to the residential. And I think this discussion is helpful, but I think it also lends to potential examples that you all can share so we can see numbers. 'Cause right now we're thinking in abstract. For me, it helps me to see an example with numbers that I could follow, and I know the numbers aren't real, right? But at least we got the numbers around the impact on the resident, how it flows. Question is impact on revenue, and if it offsets, how do we know it's gonna offset, right? Like, how do we know we keep getting the 200,000, it's just a different from both, different amounts coming from each bucket? Like, how do you show that? Because I think that can help around the discussions, right? We have a lot of commercial developments in the works, right? We have several that are gonna bring in additional commercial real estate taxes, right? So like, how are we thinking about, if we might want to, decrease what the residential property owners are paying and it not necessarily having an overall decrease while they will pay less, it won't overall decrease our revenue. Like, I need to see an example.
Yes,
I
ma'am.
think that will help kind of address some of the questions. And again, this seems like a really big decision to have to make by January 21st. What I just thought about is the South Fulton Municipal Association meeting is after that.
Well,
And is there a way to potentially, and I know we have to do this by March 1st, so I'm not trying to take that option off the table, but is February 3rd too late so that council would have the benefit of that potential discussion at the South Fulton Municipal Association meeting for those who attend? Because then that's a regional discussion, right, around this and impact, and kind of have that conversation before we make a decision.
Yes. What I had on the presentation is just a proposed date.
Yeah.
So it gives us enough time. We just wanted to start the conversation.
Absolutely, I appreciate that.
And give us enough time, so then even in February 3rd or the next work session in February, we can come to a conclusion.
So when do we trigger, oh, that's for the floss sales tax where you have to do the 3 publications. When is that?
That's what I was getting ready to say.
Yeah.
The 3 publications is the key, because what you're looking at is you have to have, the same way we do the
Millage rate.
millage rate, you have to have 10 days between each meeting, as far as getting to discuss it for the public. And then it has to be done, once again, you have to have 3 set public hearings to
If you're
decide
gonna opt in.
if you're going to opt out.
Oh, okay.
If you're going to opt out, you got to have 3 public hearings before February 28th, because we got to make sure that they have their information by then.
Yeah, and March 1st is a Saturday, that's why they're saying February 28th, right? And so,
And I know you all keep getting tired of me saying we're under the gun, but that's how they give
I
it.
can hear you.
I know it sounds like every time I come, we're under the
No,
gun,
no.
but that's how they give it to me.
This is
So.
state legislation's kind of, there's a whole bunch of
Right.
things kind of outside of us that we're dealing with. But, you know, and we can talk about this at the work session, and I'll try to confirm what the agenda is going to be at the South Fulton Municipal Association, like if we're in fact going to talk about it. Because, I mean, there still would be a way to do it, right? We just probably end up with a special call meeting to make it happen, if that's what council decides. So I'll reach out to the mayors and see if that's going to be a topic of discussion, because if we're not going to discuss it, then it's not going to really, it wouldn't make sense to wait, right? So I'll know that by Monday, but if you all could get us some examples and, you know, the decreased revenue that we'll get from the residential property owners, how it might be offset and we're still collecting the same money, like that discussion, because it is a decrease. There's going to be a decrease, but just to whom, and will it be an overall decrease? I think that Councilmember Shropshire.
Thank you. And I was going to say, do you think it's helpful if our state reps can come in and have a conversation about this as well? I know we usually have meetings and they would give us updates on what has passed on the state level, and that might be helpful to have them to come in, because they passed it.
Yeah, I definitely think it may be helpful, but sometimes they don't get into the numbers either. And so if we are going to do that, it probably would be good to do it like the 21st or something after that, after staff brings us numbers and examples, because they will take the questions that we have to the state staff to get responses to that from them to share with us. So I wouldn't want them to like not be prepared to deal with our questions. So if maybe we want to do that after Monday's meeting, where we get more information and they can consolidate whatever questions we have to share with our state reps for them to come.
And that would be good, because I know we usually do a roundtable with them, so this probably would be a good time to do that. And if we have any other items that we have concerns about as well.
Yeah, so Madam City Clerk, if you can put on the 13th work session, the legislative roundtable discussion around that, if we want to try to have it. Legislative session starts sometime this month. I can't remember the day at the state level. But the sooner we have those discussions about what they may need to move forward for us at the local level, or just what might be coming up, better. So we can put it on for Monday, and then maybe talk to them to kind of bounce around some dates that might work for them this month. Once session starts, they kind of get pulled in a lot of different directions, but they might be able to share some dates for that. I think we generally do it in the evening, but it is a special call meeting. So Madam City Clerk, if you could do that for the work session discussion, so we can talk more about it. Anyone else? So this has been a very robust discussion, and I know this is not the end of, not even my questions for sure, probably others. So Monday, work session, having more examples, having more information for us would be helpful if we actually have to stick with the 21st time.
Madam Mayor, I wanted to say we had no expectation that tonight would be any decision-making or what have you, but we wanted to get it before you as soon as possible so that we could start to get an idea of the questions you have. We had actually talked previously about some examples of what it would be in made-up numbers, but we decided we should wait, put this out, and then see what questions you have. Staff also aggressively tried to get into sessions that maybe GMA or ACCG or those other organizations were having, but they were very scarce. As the mayor said, this was not dates set by us. This is being driven by the state and the General Assembly, so we had to take what they offered us and brought it to you as soon as we could. But we'll bring back additional information, and feel free to send whatever questions you have as soon as they come up, and they can start to work on those.
Yeah, I thank you, Ms. Jessie. Again, I thank staff. Generally, we're like, why we're just getting, I get why we're just getting this now. Like, there's a lot of moving parts and a lot of information to try to digest. I appreciate you all bringing it to this meeting. I think that because that gives us an opportunity to have more discussions and more targeted based upon what we discussed tonight versus you all kind of speculating. So I do appreciate it being presented to us at this first opportunity post January 1, right? So we can maximize that time period. But let's just, and let's keep thinking, let's keep thinking about opportunities to bring it forward, opportunities to get questions answered, opportunities to engage our state representatives, opportunity to have a regional discussion, right? Like folding all of that into a timeline. So that we can make the most informed decision. But it sounds like if we don't decide to opt in and we later want to do a local floating homestead exemption, we still can, right? Like, so we're not necessarily hampered unless we decided we want to do something less than the state. So it sounds like we still have options, but we want to make sure we fully understand it and discuss it so we can make an informed decision as to whichever way we decide to go. So thank you all so much for this, and we look forward to continued discussion and hashing out and making the numbers, like giving us just something to see. Hypothetically, we know it's not real, but I think all of that is going to help us make the decision, and I appreciate you all maximizing the time that we do have to try to make this decision. All right. Thank you. So, Madam City Clerk, work session. Next up is facade grant funding distribution. Ms. Jessie.
Madam Mayor and members of council, Maceo Rogers is here for round 3 or 4 with this program to bring back information that you all requested at the last session, and I'm going to turn it over to Maceo.
Good evening, and thank you, Acting City Manager Jessie, and Happy New Year to Mayor and Council. It's great to see you all. Today I will briefly share with you from last month's meeting the request for recommendation with respect to the City of East Point facade grant funding distribution proposal. And based on the increased amount to $600,000 for this program, the proposed recommendation seeks to distribute a grant funding of $600,000 for facade improvements effectively and equitably across 5 areas, including wards A through D, and of course, the Central Downtown Business District. The proposal attempts to balance the unique needs of each area while fostering, I should say, collaboration and shared interest across the city. This proposed structure will create the desired balance for considering advances made in all wards involving sidewalk improvements, business locations, as well as the advances made in downtown through the LCI, Livable Centers Initiative, including sidewalks, pedestrian lanes, streetlights, etc. A lot of the things that we've seen taking place in the downtown district thus far. In addition to the recently constructed City Hall that we preside in today and the soon-to-be developed Commons project. The factors for consideration for this distribution consist of economic impact, prioritized project that will enhance business activity, attract visitors, or increase property values. Equity, ensure each ward, including the downtown Central Business District, benefits from the allocated funding. Community appeal, focus on projects that improve visual appeal and enhance community pride. And then, of course, urgency, address commercial properties or buildings in critical need of repair/enhancement. And these factors, I believe, will be critical to and for potential economic growth and contribution to the community's overall vision. Okay, so the grant option areas of focus, the baseline proposed options are as follows. Allocate a flat baseline amount or percentage to ensure all areas receive some funding while reserving flexibility for additional prioritization. Because there is this consensus for vested interest in downtown, and the need for enhancements there, as well as across all wards. The consideration here would be a flat $200,000 for downtown and a flat $100,000 per each ward. Additionally, another way of looking at it would be to distribute basically $180,000, which amounts to 30% of the total $600,000 to downtown, and each of the 4 wards then would receive $105,000, which amounts to 17.5% for each ward. And these are just ideas or amounts for you to consider for this initiative. What this would do in terms of what we would do to look at the outcomes in terms of assessment, we would track how funds are spent and the outcomes achieved. This would require progress reports from recipients, address the economic and aesthetic impacts of the projects, and of course we use these insights to guide future funding decision if they were to come up again with respect to any funding allocations that we might have for this type project or other similar type projects that we might have for city initiatives. And then finally, part of this equation consists of a shared prioritization for downtown. Given, again, the vested interest in downtown that council spoke of at the last meeting, the shared interest across downtown would consist of wards considering or maybe wishing to contribute part of their individual allocation to downtown projects if there is a shared project interest. For example, each ward might contribute a certain amount, and this is just an example of 10 to 20% of the allocation to downtown projects if they see a shared benefit. We don't have an account as to what the response will be for this initiative, but we are very intentional with our marketing efforts in terms of communicating and getting the word out. And so we anticipate a good degree of participation from the community, but I don't have any information to share with you based on that at this point because we hadn't launched the initiative at this time. But based on the shared prioritization for downtown, there's this example right here. So the breakdown could be as such: districts 1, or wards, I should say, 1 through 4 get the, for example, baseline of $100,000, and the baseline for downtown is $180,000. If there is a shared interest with respect to participating in a downtown project or projects, a ward might desire to contribute a portion of its allocation to downtown. In this case, we just throw in $15,000 from each ward. That takes you to $90,000 each. It adds an additional $60,000 to the downtown area. That takes that area to $240,000. Just as an idea that you may consider for downtown, benefits of this approach would be basically ensures equitable baseline distribution while addressing unique needs. Some of the needs with respect to downtown might be historical in nature, whereas you want to preserve the authenticity of a downtown location based on, again, its historic nature. It would promote collaboration and shared investment in downtown district, maximize the impact of funds through matching contributions and stakeholder input, and then, of course, maintain flexibility to prioritize urgent or high-impact projects. One reason for putting this in is based on community benefits and opportunities following some of the, or considering some of the events that will be coming to Atlanta starting this year. The 2025 NCAA will be this year. It's right upon us. The National Championship, the 2025 Major League Baseball All-Star Game, the Federational International Football Association, FIFA, of 26 will be here next year. That's the World Cup. And then, of course, the NFL in 2028 Super Bowl, as well as to be followed by the 2031 NCAA Men's Final Four. Those are opportunities when you consider where the downtown area is located. We'll have a lot of traffic via MATA coming through by train, by bus, traveling north and south, getting to and from the airport, as well as visitors commuting to downtown and throughout the city of East Point. But this is just for your consideration in terms of how you would like these funds distributed. So we will do it according to your wish, but this is to simply give you an idea of the proposed recommendation based on the funds that you've allocated for this purpose. At this time, I will take any questions.
Thanks for your presentation, Councilmember Mitchell.
Yes, thank you for your presentation. Quick question. What was the matching portion? What was that percentage?
25%.
So 25%?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And, okay, no, thank you.
Okay.
Councilmember Martin Rogers.
Thank you so much for your presentation. Can you go back to the outreach?
Yes, ma'am.
There was an outreach slide that I saw in there earlier. I don't think that was it. Talked about being at Cupcakery. The first meeting was at Cupcakery. That's one I saw earlier when I looked at the presentation.
Oh, yes, that's not in this presentation.
Okay.
So yes, but let me talk about that.
Yes.
The outreach, our first wave went out today. January 6th was the proposed date, and so we put that at this point across all of our social media platforms, Facebook, Instagram, etc. We've also sent out our first newsletter as well with the flyer that you can see, and we've posted it to our events calendar. So we have two, starting on January the 8th, Wednesday of this week, two community outreach meetings that will take place at Cupcakery downtown. And then, of course, we have one on February 5th that will follow up as well. We plan to do a recording of the one on Wednesday, and we'll be able to post that on the city's website as well as a playback. We initially planned to do a live webinar, but I'm not sure we'll be able to pull that off at this time based on the workload of our communications department. So the plan is to record what we do on Wednesday, and we can post that and have that played back for people who cannot make either of the meetings, but that information will be posted on the city's website.
All right, and to follow up with that, I mean, I think that everyone on council expressed their sentiments for a plaza in their ward that was of grave concern to them. I know for myself, it was that Washington Road Plaza, I believe that it's called, on the other side of Washington Road.
Yes, ma'am.
But what I just wanted to reiterate was this has to be an aggressive approach. Like, it really, really does. I like the meetings at Cupcakery, but maybe putting in a telephone call, maybe going on site, speaking with someone will also be beneficial. Because I think that we're putting forth a lot of effort here, but I also think that, you know, we are returning from the holidays. People may be busy, but just insistence with telephone calls and with follow-up, because this is a very decent program that we have. It's a facade improvement. It's going to beautify every ward. But I also think that the property owners or the business owners need to know that this is important to the East Point City Council. This is important to our economic development. We need to get them to buy into this.
Yes, ma'am. I totally agree. Next Wednesday, a week from this Wednesday, we will be officially launching the initiative. So we will post that on the website. We will have the flyer, the application, frequently asked questions, and the criteria that these applications will be based on. That will be next Wednesday. At the same time, we will distribute flyers to this facility, to all of our other government facilities, customer care, the LEC, the city annex. I don't think the library would be open, but also the Senior Biden Center. And then, of course, we're going to boots on ground, distribute in downtown specifically to local businesses that will have the ability to connect with directly and take any questions that they might have during that time as well.
All right, and then just my last question I want to follow up with. I know that you're having meetings in Cupcakery, but Ward D is on the other side of the city, the southernmost part of the city, so maybe in the future it could be some consideration to have a meeting in Ward D.
Yes, ma'am.
But thank you. How will you keep the timeline, or how will you let us know which, I guess, plaza owners bought into this? Will you keep us abreast of that?
Yes, ma'am. So the deadline is for getting all of the applications is February the 14th. We're going to begin a very aggressive push as a kind of like 3-day, 1-day countdown to getting that information in, because we really want people to respond to this initiative. And so you'll start hearing about that leading up to the deadline. Then, of course, on the 17th, that following Monday of February, we will have our evaluation team assemble. We will take a look and begin to compile the information that we've gotten, the applications. We're going to segment it out by ward so that everything is fair and just with respect to the applications that we get, because we know that we have a certain allocation amount that would go to each ward, and we don't want to get that entangled and mixed up or anything like that. And then any leftover funding, this is where the shared piece comes in that you might want to consider. I hope we don't have anything left over from any ward, but in case we don't get the responses that we wish to get, then that's something that we at the end of the day, we want to make sure that we dispense all of the funding. And so that would be the plan that we would go through at that particular point in time.
This, have we thought of?
Councilmember Atkins, Councilmember Martin Rogers, you were in too. So let me just write down the names. Councilmember Atkins was next, Councilmember Shropshire, Councilmember Cummings, and then if you all can release so that Councilmember Martin Rogers' mic will be active.
I mean, was that your question? Oh, okay, this is it. What if the plaza doesn't, or what if someone doesn't take, should we have a plan B for another place in Ward D if this person, or if either ward, you can't? Okay. All right, thank you. I have my answer.
Okay.
Councilmember Atkins.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Rogers.
Sure.
Can you give me an example of a shared benefit? So I know you talked about a lot of the major events that will be coming to the area. So if there's, how would that work exactly?
Yeah, so there might be, say, along Whiteway, we know that there are those buildings along that stretch of road right down in the heart of downtown are basically historic in nature. And there could be a shared interest from council members that want to see that enhanced more than, say, what, the allocated funding amount would be. And if that is an interest, then we would take your contribution and apply it towards, or equally towards, those projects that you would have an interest in. Now, if you do have interest, it would just be a matter of expressing that. We will take the applications and see who responded. But if there is an application that you're aware of with respect to who responded to the grant, and you'd like to see more done than, say, what funding has been awarded to them, that's where the shared interest would come in. Because there is, the cap of funding that we have right now, there might be something that you would like to see take place that wouldn't necessarily be covered by the amount of funding that you have. So a little bit of a nudge or an addition to that would help get it over the finish line, basically.
Okay. And I was asking that question because just chronologically, I was trying to figure out how that would work. So using your example about Whiteway, right, and the historic nature of some of the facades and the signs and those kinds of things. And my other question is also this, so if a ward would like to contribute some of their dollars to that shared interest project, at what point would we know what would be needed, or even if that particular business applied for the grant?
So it could be on the front end, just a allocated amount, 1%, 5%, up to, I just threw an example, up to 10% of what you have right now. If you feel that there is a shared interest, you could say, of my 100,000 that we have in Ward B, for example, we would like to give 10% of that, to downtown. So 10% would be $10,000. You could do that on the front end. So for example, downtown area has 200,000 right now, for example. If that's the allocation, now you've just added another $10,000 to it. And so you could do that on the front end from that vantage point, but also you could wait until the results come in to see what applicants responded to the outreach effort, and we can certainly communicate who the awardees are within the downtown area, and we could, before those award letters go out, we could make the adjustments if that's an interest that you would like to proceed with.
Okay. And I was asking the question about the chronology, because if a ward decides to give 10% up front, because there's a shared interest specifically for the facades on Whiteway, but they don't even apply. So now we've given up 10%, so do we get that money back? Because we may have in a ward more interest, and now we need that money back. So that's why I was asking about the process.
Sure, absolutely. So based on the deadline, we will know, the following week who has responded. And we can certainly let you know. Now, of course, we wouldn't have made the evaluations as to who would be a recipient or an awardee, because the evaluations wouldn't have taken place at that time. But before anything goes out, we can certainly communicate with the leadership who submitted and, of course, who was awarded. And if there is, yes, a desired interest of allocating a portion of the fund, if you hadn't done that at that point in time, we can certainly make the adjustments before anything is awarded, if that is the desire.
All right, so we could give, but we could also take it back if the money...
That is true. I mean, you can, because again, at the end of the day, we want to make sure that all of the funding is exhausted. And it might be then that we go back and look at some of the applications that perhaps didn't get awarded. And now we might look at how we can get that particular applicant across the finish line as well. But I don't think we'll have that problem. I could be wrong, but I'm fairly optimistic that we'll have a good response from the efforts that we're going to put out. And I think the funding will be exhausted. That's in quick time.
And since we're talking about downtown, I know in the application you speak of the central downtown district, right?
Yes, sir.
So that's a defined area. So do we also, just so that businesses will know whether they're inside of that or out, is there a map that is included?
Yes, we will have a map specifically of downtown. Matter of fact, we'll share, we're going to have a big blow up so that for folk who are attending the meetings in person, they will be able to see that, but we'll post that on the website as well. So there's no, and we will have a map of East Point citywide that will have all 4 districts, and it's the standard map that you would see right now on the website.
Okay, and so that map also specifically for the downtown central district, that would be a part of the application.
Yes, so
that they will, because the question I have is, so if my business is downtown and all of downtown is in Ward A, is that right?
I think so, yes. I have to look at it again.
So then is it that you're saying that if your business in downtown, you want them to first apply to the downtown pot, or do they apply to the ward pot? So how do they make a decision?
No, so if they're downtown, they apply to downtown. That's how it would be awarded, because we're gonna have downtown pot, we're gonna have all 4 wards pot.
Okay.
And we'll take those applications, and as they come in, if they land in Ward A, they go to Ward A and et cetera.
Okay.
And then we look at what the results are in terms of who applied and how much they applied for, and if their project in terms of what they're proposing to do warrants the amount of money that they're asking.
Okay, gotcha.
And Arden's Gardens down to the College Park line is Ward B. So there's parts of A and B in downtown.
Yes, and so I'll have to look at that map again in terms of the actual boundary, but yes, we're going to look at what is downtown, and based on what they put on their application in terms of their address, we'll be verifying that information.
Okay. Two other quick questions. The information that you sent out, I believe it was on the 13th of December. There was a section that talked about eligible projects. And what I noticed in there is that an eligible project is the resurfacing or the striping of a parking lot. Is that correct? That's an eligible project?
That is correct.
Okay. So if I'm a business and I've been working on my facade and I feel like, well, I don't need money, because in my mind I think of a facade as the front or the face of a building, that I don't need money for that, I'm only applying for the parking lot. So that's completely permissible. They can only apply for the parking lot and touch none of the facade.
That's correct.
Okay. And then there was also, in one of the other sections, I believe that there was a threshold, $10,000. So the project must be a minimum of $10,000?
Yes, and that's just based on, the data that we retrieved from the research that we did. Even for just pressure washing, you're getting upwards of $10,000 easily. And so if you were going to do anything in addition to that, it could be something as simple as trimming your baseboards around your window frames or something like that. And based on the calculation, you would easily get to that particular point based on the information that we've retrieved for this type of work. But yes, you can certainly do, and of course the whole idea would be to encourage to do more than just say a $5,000 improvement, if they apply.
So I'm thinking about that also in the flip. I'm a business, a small business. I have a business. I've been working on my facade, and I've done a lot of work. I haven't finished, but I've done a lot of work. And I only have about $7,000 more worth of work to do, so I'm completely ineligible. Because what I hear is that then if it's a threshold of $10,000, I might make up something else to be done for $3,000 just so that I'm eligible, when that $3,000 could maybe go to another business that may need it. So that's why I was trying to figure out how you came up with the threshold.
Yes, so we're going to be looking at critical need in terms of visibility. There are likely buildings that would be in, I wouldn't say considerable disrepair, but they could be really in grave need for that. And so we're going to take that application, and if they've been working on it, we probably not look at that as being as much a critical need as, say, someone maybe down the street who applied, because their property may not look as bad. But that's not something that one or two people would decide on. It would be a committee based on, this department, economic development, planning, city manager's office, to look at the merit of the application, where it is based on high traffic, even right down to the street that it's located on, because of the amount of traffic that it gets. Main Street, for example, would be a criteria that we would look at, to a greater degree than, say, a less traveled street like Taylor, for example, because of the amount of traffic that flows along Main Street, flows along Bobby Brown, Norman Berry, Washington Road, Kemp Creek Parkway, and places like that. The degree of visibility that it has from the street in terms of mass appeal. So what we'll be looking at, we'll be scoring based on some of those properties that will attract that kind of additional tourist attraction, foot traffic, business to generate revenue.
So I just say that, Mr. Rogers, because my business could be on Main Street, high traffic, high visibility. I've been working very hard. I don't need much, but I don't need $10,000.
Right.
And then I feel like I can't apply for it. I feel like I'm penalized.
No, not to say that at all. I mean, apply, because again, we're going to look at and we're going to score the applications, again, based on merit, based on what we've talked about in the past. So no one is eliminated from the outset at all. We will base it totally 100% on the merit.
Okay, I asked because that information said project must be a minimum of $10,000.
Well, yeah, and that's a beginning point. I mean, again, we had to start somewhere, and that was based on the data that I collected with respect to a company that does that kind of work. And it was like, well, 10,000 is not a high bar to reach. But if there are businesses that have been doing things already, certainly I would encourage to continue. If there's an opportunity to help based on the fact that they are applying, we will certainly consider it. So no one is going to be just turned away from the effort that they've put into it. But we will have a criteria that we will go by, and we will just look at the project and base it on its merits.
All right, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you. I have a question. So how do you determine if a council person if they want to give their money? Would both council people have to make that decision?
Yes, it would be a shared
Would it
interest.
be brought back to council for a vote?
No, I don't think it'd have to.
Yes, it will.
Okay, sure. Well,
Council can't
yes.
make decisions
Okay.
about
Sorry.
allocations without the
Right.
vote of the entire council. So
Okay.
I understand the conversations that are being happened, but I mean, that ideas that are being discussed or just crossing people's mind. Even if Ward make that decision, that has to be a vote of this council. Like, we can't just do this by email, because then we get ourselves in
Sure.
situations of violating the Open Meetings Act by making decisions by email.
Understood.
That have to be made publicly. So,
Right.
yes, it would have to be brought back to council.
Thank you. And so my next question is this. So what is the exact amount that each ward would get? Because I know when we had this conversation, we never said take all of this money and put it into downtown. We said equally distributed.
Yes, ma'am.
And it depends on what the area was and what the need was. And from what I'm hearing, I see that you already set up a meeting and you're going to be aggressively working with downtown, but what about the other areas? What about the shopping plaza? How are you going to get that out? How do they know about the meeting that's going to take place downtown? Like, for us, the Wayfield Plaza, the Family Dollar Plaza, the plaza that's on Bayard. How are they going to know? And what is the exact amount that's going per ward besides the $180,000 or $200,000 that's going to downtown? So that lump sum goes to downtown, and each ward gets what?
So there are two options. One for a flat 200 for downtown, and 100 flat for each of the 4 wards. And
So
then,
each ward gets $100,000, or
That's-
each ward has to divide the $100,000, while downtown get a flat of 200.
so each ward would get $100,000.
Can you
That's
go
one
back to
option.
the screen with the options,
Yes.
please?
There we are. So right now, Councilwoman, option
So
one.
each ward would get $100,000 per ward. So
That's correct.
each ward would get $100,000, or each ward would get $105,000
That is correct, as an option.
to be divided. So Ward A would get $105,000, and AB, okay. And you've already said, it's already been determined that if a ward wants to give their money to downtown, it has to come back before council to vote on it, because not all council people might agree to that.
Yes.
Because there are plazas in ward that really need fixing up. So I
Yes,
come
ma'am.
back to the question, how are you going to notify them? Because I see that y'all are aggressively working to put it downtown, but you still have plazas that's in wards that needs attention.
Yes,
So what are y'all doing to notify them?
So our first wave of communication went out earlier today. We have posted it on the city's calendar of events, notifying that Wednesday, February 8th will be the first in-person community meeting. February 5th would be the second in-person community meeting. We've put it out on all our social platforms, Facebook, Instagram. So you will have this on the city's website, as well as we've put it out in our first initial newsletter.
So let me ask you this. How did you notify the businesses downtown about the meeting?
Right now, through the newsletter and the website. That information just went out today.
So how did y'all determine that the meeting will be at Cupcakery?
So-
So there had to be some kind of conversation.
No, we determined that because the Cupcakery, we've been doing first Wednesday monthly meetings for the last
At
2-3
Cupcakery.
years, yes.
Okay, so how many businesses at the plaza attend the meeting, those meetings?
It varies, and I don't have a tracking of that, but these are reoccurring meetings, and we do it at Cupcakery because of its kind of centralized location, and we have that ongoing meeting allocated time frame. It's consistent, there's no guesswork, it's the first Wednesday, 8:30 to basically 10:30, and we've been steady with that since over the last couple of years or so.
So I'm gonna have to piggyback off Councilmember Martin. The plaza where Sammy Cheesecake is. How are you all gonna notify them? Because if y'all are having a meeting every month at Cupcakery, they're out on Washington Road. They have no idea about this meeting. They have no idea about this money. So how are you all, what are you all going to do? Because I hear you saying you're going to go on social media, you're going to do this. And I know when we talked about it, we talked about better ways of notifying these business owners. So what are you all going to do to make sure the owners of these plazas are at the meeting and they know about this money?
So additionally, we will take all of the emails that we have of the businesses that we have on file, and we will be making a strong push to say, please respond to this. I can certainly try and recruit volunteers to help us do cold calling. I don't have staff for that at this point, but we will be walking through downtown next Wednesday to distribute, and if we have to go out to the plazas to do that as well.
And that's what I was going to say.
We can do that.
Because if you're walking through downtown to make sure they know, then you can walk to these plazas and get in contact with these owners to make sure they know, because it should be equally shared and equally distributed.
So we will certainly take, Councilwoman, the manpower, the resources that we have to try and touch everyone, but we don't have the bandwidth to get to every plaza through the city, but
So Ms. Jessie, people need to know.
Exactly.
So whether we're putting in the utility bills, 'cause every business get a bill. If we're canvassing, like, we have resources and staff available to make sure the information gets out throughout the city. We have emails of businesses, like, it can't just be people coming to the meetings. So if you could work with Mr. Rogers or economic or whatever team is working on this, like, if we move forward and people didn't know and we're providing an opportunity for these types of grants, that's gonna be a problem. So,
Yes, ma'am.
but if we say, we put it in the utility bills, right? Like, if they start it now, it's gonna run a full cycle. What's the deadline for?
The deadline is February 14th.
Yeah, so we're over a month. If they start running now, they'll make the full cycle, right? Like, we have to be able to say that we got the word out equitably, fairly, and all the other words that have been used as a part of this presentation. Because if people don't know, we're wasting everybody's time. And then we're gonna be talking about we gotta extend it because we didn't get the word out. So there are a number of different things that we have outside of just social media and postings, our website. There are a number of different ways that we can reach out to people. And we just need to make sure we do that as soon as possible. If we start using the utility bill, businesses are gonna start talking. When they get their bill, they're gonna look for it, right? Like, there's a way to make sure people know. And it can't just be based upon whether or not we directly, like, contact and go to each business. Like, I don't think we're in 2024. Like, there are a number of different ways to make that happen. I think that's what the concern is. Like, it'll be a concern, it'll be an issue for all of us. If we don't make efforts, and we can't say that these are the efforts we made that would have made it available and accessible to everybody. So if you could
Yes, ma'am.
work with that.
Yes.
And thank you, and that's what I was gonna say. Just like we are aggressively working downtown, we need to aggressively work these plazas. The Piggly Wiggly Plaza, the plaza on Washington Road where the Family Dollar is, the plaza where Sammy Cheesecake, the plaza where Wayfield is, the plaza where the Family Dollar is at Headland and Delowe, the plaza on Bayard, and the plaza on Sylvan Road. And if I missed any, let me know.
Yes, ma'am.
And we can do phone calls. If you have the phone number, because I'm sure they have to apply for business license or something, there's something on file that you can contact them and let them know.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So, a couple of things. First thing, my opinion, I think we're putting, the cart before the horse. We really don't know who's going to apply for the grant. So to say how much money will be allocated in each ward, I get the options, and I think they're cool. We can kind of, figure out who it is. But I think if you had all of the applicants in, then you'll know exactly, and then you put each one in there, A, B, C, D, and downtown pile, you'll know what you have for each particular ward. But the thing before that is all the applicants. Everybody needs to be notified, just as you said, just as the mayor and all my colleagues have said. So I put here the business license office. Every owner that applies for a business license, you can get an address from there. It should be a standard letter that's drafted, and it basically breaks down this program. And then that way, you can reach all of the business owners that way. Tax assessor's office, because you look at, I may own Chicolo's, but I don't own the plaza that it sits in. I can't own Chicolo's and say I want to paint my little storefront overhang there, but I pay my rent to the Chicolo Plaza owner people. So to be able to reach out to them, and that would be through the tax assessor's office, because it's some kind of, or you may be able to talk to them, the management there. Utility bills as well. And us as council people. We advocating for these businesses in our wards. If you have that flyer, we may be able to take it. We say the plaza that Sammy's Cheesecake is in looks like it looks. We may take a flyer and say, hey, whoever it is you pay your rent to, they can forward that, pass that information on as well. And that's just the way that way everybody knows, they know about the program, and in that way, everybody, it's a fair playing field. Everybody had an option. Next thing, parameters set in place. I know I read the email, the application, and it says up to $10,000. So like my colleague said, I may only need $3,000 worth of work. But if it's a grant that's available, and if I can take advantage of it, if it's $4,000, if I put in $1,000 and I need $3 from the city, well, okay, that's just $4 that comes out of that pot. So I think what would be good is, because I look at it, I'll take the Chicolo Plaza, and let's just say that's 10,000 square feet. And it may be a certain dollar amount that they're able to get. That way you try and get as many people to, if we just put some basic stuff out there. So it may be somebody, the Chicolo Plaza person. And then the young man that owns the snow cone places right on Washington Road, the blue and yellow. Well, maybe he can get those tree stumps out of the parking lot. But I mean, he may not need $10,000 to get it done. So I think just maybe for that particular, maybe a business that's only, because I think maybe if it's 800 square feet, maybe for something up to 2,000 square feet or whatever, maybe $5,000. I don't know. That way, if you have something, everybody will have an opportunity to get a piece of, get a piece of the pie. So you'll have different types of businesses, and where I may not be in a plaza, I may be a standalone mom and pop business, and I want to take advantage of this. So I think if we put just some basic parameters, so it doesn't matter what it is, but if we do something based on square footage, I think that's like the only thing that I could just kind of think of that would be easy, and assess a dollar amount to it. Then, and once everybody has the information, everybody that wants to participate, because still at the end of the day, I mean, if everybody knows, then they know, and if they choose to apply, then they choose to apply. We may say that the Sammy Cheesecake Plaza is a dump, and if we put it out there to the business owner, and if he doesn't want to fix his building up, then that takes him out of it. But I mean, at least he can't say it, and he can't come back and say, well, I didn't know anything about it. So once then you have everybody that's going to participate, and you put them in the different pots, in the different wards in downtown, you know exactly what it is you have. And then based on that, I think it would be cool to come back and just sort of give us, hey, we had $100,000 for Ward A. And it may only be that Ward B only had $80,000. So Ward B technically has $20,000. And either they can, if it was to go to help some stuff downtown, or maybe Ward C had $120,000. Maybe that money can go there. But I mean, at the end of the day, you want to make sure that we definitely spend all of the money. So I think really, it's 100 different ways that this thing can go, but I think really until you actually see what it is that you have. But if we put just some basic stuff, just sort of what some parameters, can be, basic, nothing really hard, and put it out to make sure that everybody gets it. And I think number one is going to the business office, because everybody has to apply for a business license, and the tax assessor, because they're all supposed to pay taxes. That way you should be able to lock in on every business. And then to piggyback on top of that, you have your social media, because mom and pop had a printing business for 40 years. They probably not on Instagram or anything. I mean, they may be, but I mean, if it's a dry cleaners, and that's just what they've done, they may not feel the need that they're on social media or whatever. But that way you reach out to them, but I'm sure they'll read their utility bill. They'll read the letter that you mail out to them. Right. And it may be something that you can, give the council members. I mean, I don't mind if, like, the Wayfield or the Piggly Wiggly, whatever, I can take it by, at least give it to the store manager. They can give it to the building owner. We can go from there.
Yes, ma'am. Well, so we've gotten all of the renewed business licenses from all of the businesses from the planning department, so we can mail out letters without a doubt, as well as put them into the utility bills.
Okay, and just so we kind of make it a smooth, easy process. I yield.
Yeah, Councilmember Cummings, that was a great idea about the business licenses. And, these are all types of things we would expect to hear from staff as a complete communication outreach plan. I think it's both and it's, everything that council members have said, but it's also ensuring that we have a process that doesn't appear to be political. So once you get council members going to businesses, giving out flyers, the other plaza gonna say, why didn't council member come by my shop, right? And I'm not saying, I think it's, if they get it from staff and you're following up from what's already sent, that's one thing. Like, there has to be a city-wide dissemination of information. So it's not like we were deciding which businesses we wanted to pick and all of that. Because that's going to have Attorney Wiggins having to potentially deal with some stuff on the back end. I think as it relates to, we should be, it's like one band, one sound. Whatever we share should be what's been sent by the city, the letter, the flyer, like all of that information should be emailed to council. And if you're out and you see a business owner, like, have you gotten this? Like, here's the information for it, like that kind of stuff, right? But it is also, I think, deciding on an option commits this council to something versus like if we get them all in and then we're like, oh, we want this to go here, this to go there. Like if we commit to something up front and then we have to adjust, I think that helps with fairness and, you know, taking the perception, I'll say perception of politics. I don't think that's our intent, but the perception of that, because we committed to something, then we put it out, this is what we got, and so we're making adjustments based upon what we receive. But I would suggest that we commit to one of the options to just start with and then make a decision down, you know, once we get them in. There was the other, I don't know if the other part of wards contributing more to downtown, like if that's an option 3, or if that's just something the council members can decide to recommend the council to do for their ward for either option. Is that for either option?
Yeah, it was just if there is a wish for downtown.
Right, but these options already accommodate downtown.
Yes, they do.
These options provide more money to downtown than the wards. Also, initially, when it was $350,000 and we decided to go with, so we decided it was going to be 25% match. We decided it was going to be the 4 wards plus downtown as a separate area, 5 wards. Like we made some decisions to get to this point. So 350,000 divided by 5 is 87,500.
Right.
So either of these options increases the amount that's going to go to the ward and increases the amount that's going to go to downtown, like already, right? So I think it would be helpful from a process perspective if council agreed to a consensus around one of these, just as a starting place, understanding based upon applications, if nobody applies an award, then that's a whole pool of money that we got to decide what to do with, right? But we're dealing with it based upon after we let everybody know, and everybody has opportunity, and then we respond to the applications that we get. So, yes, tonight is a meeting where we can take action. I guess the amount per applicant isn't changing, so that's how they can go ahead and advertise, and it's still up to the 10,000. But this will kind of just help with another decision point to start from an objective place and then adjust based upon what we receive. So council can make a decision, council can decide either to make that decision tonight, to make it later, but I think it should be made before the application closes so that there's a commitment and then we respond to what we receive. So we spent quite a bit of time on this. I don't know if anyone wants to make a motion about option 1 or 2 or think about it some more and decide later. I think from getting the cart moving and not putting it before the horse, like after this decision, we could get information once all the applications come in and then talk about it from that perspective, and also making sure we get an update on Monday about the communication plan and strategy. Or Ms. Jessie, you can email that to us or whatever, but like we need to make sure that this gets out citywide. So, Councilmember Shropshire.
Thank you. Madam Mayor, I make a motion that we go with option 2.
There's a motion to go to option 2. Councilmember Mitchell seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? No. Roll call, please.
Sorry. Councilmember Shropshire?
Yes.
Councilmember Atkins? No. All right. Councilmember Ziegler?
No.
Councilmember Cummings? Yes. Councilmember Mitchell? Yes. Councilmember Butler? Yes. Councilmember Martin Rogers? Yes. The motion passed.
Thank you.
All right, so we have a starting point. The last thing, I don't think we need another hour and a half, 2-hour presentation discussion before we get the applications back, but we do need to know the communication strategy, and then get the information once those applications are in.
Yes, ma'am. We'll get the communications information out to you this week.
All right, Councilmember Martin Rogers.
Yes, and last thing, interim Mrs. City Manager, what I would like to see also is a what if or a backup plan. Let's say Sammy's Cheesecake Plaza, they're unreachable. What would be another option in Ward D, or what else could we use these monies to allocate for? So I guess we need a plan B, C, and a D. Just something to think about. Thank you.
The next meeting after are we open on President's Day? So our meeting will be on February 17th. That'll give staff all day to go through and at least figure out how many total applicants are per area to be able to share with council at the meeting on the 17th.
On the 17th. Okay.
So council can
Yeah,
start
okay.
thinking about whether or not any adjustments need to be made. Okay, let's get one. I don't see anyone else on. And I asked this before the motion was made, the option to give more to downtown or allocate to a specific area from a ward, that's still a opportunity, but that would have to be brought before council? Right, okay.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, next up, do we have any committee reports? We have upcoming Budget and Finance Committee meeting and upcoming HR meetings. Adoption of the council agenda.
Mayor?
Yes, Councilwoman Shropshire.
I make a motion that we adopt the agenda as printed.
It's been moved and properly seconded. Any discussion? In favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. Approval of city council minutes from the regular meeting on December 16, 2024.
Madam Mayor? I make a motion that we approve the city council regular minute meetings on December the 16th.
Is there a second?
Second.
Been moved and properly seconded that we approve the regular meeting minutes from December 16th. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. We have no public hearings tonight. Madam City Clerk, do we have any public comments?
No public comments.
Next up is agenda item number 4. Can we get a motion to open the floor for discussion and possible action on the review and approval of a resolution for the general circular for the city of East Point?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded. Any discussion? All those in
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. The floor is now open, Madam City.
Okay, this is just the resolution that is done yearly for our general circulation within the city. So the South Fulton Neighborhood News is distributed to residents for free. And in the event of emergencies, we use the Atlanta Journal-Constitution or the Daily Report for time constraints and emergency circumstances.
All right. Questions for the city clerk? If not, any further action on this item? There's a request that we approve the resolution for the general circular for the city of East Point. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. Comments from council?
Thank you. I just want to say Happy New Year to everyone and do a save the date for January the 20th will be our 7th annual Martin Luther King Day of Service, which is what we call a day on, not a day off. So just save the date for that. It will be at Jefferson Park Recreation Center as it has been in the past. And again, it is going to be January the 20th. Look for the information to come out about it. Thank you.
Any other comments? Again, Happy New Year, East Pointers. From my family, yours, wishing an abundance of love, joy, peace, health, and prosperity in 2025 and the years to come. And I invite you to join me in faith as we continue to evolve, elevate, and thrive in 2025. May this be your absolute best year ever. Do we have any executive session items tonight, City Attorney?
No, ma'am.
Council? So far, we have 3 litigation, 1 real estate, and 1 personnel.
1 personnel.
It's 2 personnel. Anyone else? We can get a motion to recess into executive session for 1 real estate, 3 legal litigation, and 2 personnel.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
so moved.
There's second. It's been moved and properly seconded. Any discussion? Favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? We're in recess. A motion to reconvene.
Motion to reconvene?
It's been moved and properly seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. In the matter of Natia Morris and Dana Star Morris versus City of East Point, need a motion to proceed as discussed in executive session.
So moved.
It's been moved and properly seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. As it relates to the city manager, need a motion to authorize the city attorney to proceed as discussed in executive session. Is there a second? It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion?
Yes.
Ms. Shropshire?
Thank you. Without saying too much, I am not going to support this because I feel that the city deserves better, a better qualified candidate. And with all the high demands, this is something that the city has never done. So my vote will be a no. Thank you.
Any further discussion?
I'm in.
Councilmember Martin Rogers?
Yes, I will not be supporting the vote of hiring of a city manager. And as my counterpart said, I'm not going to go into too much detail, but as we proceed in this process, I'm going to stand firm on my decision. I will not be supporting one of the candidates that has the lowest score possible, unqualified. Thank you.
Any further discussion?
Yes, and just,
Councilmember Shropshire?
and let me say this. I'm not against hiring a city manager. The city needs that. Yes, we do, to carry out the day-to-day operation and to move forward. But I think that we need a better qualified city manager who is actually a city manager. Thank you.
Any further discussion? All those in favor? All those opposed?
No.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Shropshire? Councilmember Atkins? Councilmember Ziegler? Councilmember Cummings? Councilmember Mitchell? Councilmember Butler? Councilmember Martin Rogers? The motion passed.
Need a motion to approve executive session meeting minutes. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion carries. Motion to adjourn. It's been moved by Councilmember Shropshire, seconded by Councilmember Cummings. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion carries. Good night, East Pointers.